Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melore Nielsen, and I am the Interim Vice President for Enrollment Management and Dean of Admissions at Seattle University. I'm also the parent of a college-bound high school junior. It is truly a pleasure to speak with you today about the parent role in the college search process, both as someone who has worked in college admissions for over 25 years, but also as a parent that continues to learn what is helpful and what doesn't work with my son on a daily basis. My goal for this presentation is to give you some things to consider as you navigate the college search process with your student. But you know your student better than anyone, so use what makes sense and file away what doesn't. As a brief overview of our time together, I want to begin by doing some myth busting. There are a lot of ideas and inaccuracies floating out there, so I'll take just a few moments to address some common misunderstandings and generalizations. From there, I'll speak to you to ways you can support your student in the college search and application process. Although there are an endless number of do's, there are a few definite don'ts that we will go over together. I'll spend a few moments discussing the college admissions process and review the different factors that are typically considered in the decision process, and then wrap things up by providing resources that might be helpful to you and your student. Tonight's program will be about 45 minutes. Following my formal presentation, which is about 25 minutes, I will then address any questions submitted in the Q&A for the remaining time together. Also, as you might have seen, tonight's presentation is being recorded, which we will aim to send to you early next week. So, on to myths and urban legends. The first common misperception is that most universities only accept a very small percentage of their applicants. This is actually not true. Although the Ivy League and very selective schools get the headlines with their acceptance of only a very small percentage of applicants, the vast majority of universities accept more than 50% of their applicants. Most universities are looking for reasons to admit qualified students that they believe are prepared to be successful at their institution. The admit rate is also something knowable, and you can often find it on the institution's website. Another common thought is essays don't really matter much in the end because grades and test scores are so dominant in the admissions decision process. Now more than ever, the essay is going to play an important role in the admissions process. Given the pandemic, many students will not have test scores, and the vast majority of institutions have declared that they will be test optional for fall 2021. SU actually already made the decision to become a test optional school prior to the pandemic. So this will be the case for us going forward. Therefore, the student essay will be an important opportunity for students to share who they are, what they hope for in their college years, and how an institution aligns with their educational aspirations. Another common myth is that a long and robust list of extracurricular activities is critical. This is a bit of a yes and no. Admissions officers love learning about an applicant's activities as it helps them understand more about a student's interests, talents, and what they value putting their time into. And while a student should absolutely be encouraged to get involved in things that they enjoy, more is not always better, particularly if it limits their ability to dive deeper into activities they really love, or if it stresses them out or negatively impacts their school performance. Another myth is telling students that there is that one perfect school out there for them and they will know it immediately when they find it. Now, some students might know, without a doubt, their top choice school early on. Regardless, that is a lot of pressure for students to put on themselves and can also be quite limiting. Try to encourage your student to identify what qualities and characteristics are important to them. The size of the classroom, typical faculty-student ratio, academic programs, location. Have them be able to say why they want to go somewhere. Encourage them to spend some time reflecting on this. So even if they remain focused on one destination, at least they will know why. And if it doesn't work out, they can use that list of criteria to consider other great options. Okay, I've got two more myths. The hardest part is getting in. So this one in particular is my personal pet peeve. There is a disproportionate emphasis on the admissions process. Obviously, given the admissions scandal, the application process is really just a one-time event, But college is 4 years and will have a lasting impact far beyond that. College graduation is the goal, so choose a place where your student will thrive and persist. And I'm not trying to sound glib here, but getting in is not what future employers focus on. And last but not least, name dropping helps in the process. So if a student has a personal connection with the principal of the school or the mayor of the city or Oprah, that actually happened, by the way, that was quite exciting. By all means, it is fine to ask for a letter, but honestly, most admissions officers want to hear from people that truly know the student and can speak about his or her potential in the classroom from direct experience. Typically, teachers are often the best references for college admissions, but can certainly be supplemented by others that know students well in other contexts, such as a coach, a club advisor, a supervisor at work. I might also mention that if your student is homeschooled, they need to find a non-family member to write a letter. As much as we may want to tell ourselves that we are not biased about our child, we are, or at least you'll be perceived to be. So if that's the situation for you, reach out to your counselor and we can help you with that. So with this next slide, I just wanted to pause and take a moment to acknowledge the many valid concerns you are likely feeling as you contemplate your student going off to college. Things like finances, how they're going to transition to college life academically and socially, will they eat right? Oh, and let's just throw in a pandemic to keep everything really interesting. So there are many great resources available to help you address these and other questions, several of which I will share with you at the end of this presentation. Also, I wanted to put a plug in. We will be hosting a virtual fall preview day on Saturday, November 7th, that I hope you and your student can attend. You can see the current lineup and workshops being planned for a fall preview day on our website now. Tonight, however, I'm going to limit my focus on the parent role in the college search process and ways you can support your student so you don't stress your student out or put unintentional strain on your relationship. So over the years, parents have been given a bad rap in relation to the college admissions process. Previously, you might have heard, they were often called helicopter parents, typically because the tendency many had to hover nearby their student. This type of behavior was often associated with parents from the baby boomer generation. They encouraged their student to take the lead, but were close by if they needed anything or forgot to ask an important question. The Gen X parent behaves a bit differently, generally speaking. It's actually really fascinating and interesting to study generational differences and how it manifests in different behaviors. So being a Gen X parent myself, I was a little hurt when I started hearing that we were being compared to a lawnmower, basically because we just mow everybody down in our path. Well, I actually see it differently. I actually see us more as curlers that are simply trying to clear the path for our student. So if you look at this image, your student is the puck. The new dynamic we often see is more of a divide and conquer approach between parent and child. The parent takes on certain aspects of the process, like asking direct questions around cost, financial aid, safety, outcome data, so that their student can focus on questions related to things like student life, academic majors, internships, access to faculty and support services, etc. Whatever approach works for you and your student is the one to go with. You might, however, discuss your strategy in advance with your student, especially if you are visiting or meeting with an institution, so it doesn't just happen and catch you off guard, and you can each agree upon what questions you would like to ask or have answered. So before I begin talking about some parent do's and don'ts, I thought I would first share a brief clip from the film Lady Bird to help set the stage.
I want to go where culture is, like
How
New
in the
York,
world did I raise such a
or at least
snob?
Connecticut or New Hampshire,
Well,
where
you
writers
couldn't
live in the
get
woods.
into those schools anyway.
Mom,
You can't even pass your driver's test.
because you wouldn't let me practice
The way
enough.
that you work, or the way that you don't work, you're not even worth state tuition, Christine.
My name is Lady Bird.
Well, actually, it's not, and it's ridiculous.
Call me
because your
Lady
name
Bird
is
like you
Christine.
said you would.
You should just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail, and then back to City College, and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
So there are a few very important takeaways here. One, I think is obvious, don't be a dream killer and minimize your students' potential. And two, do not have important and potentially stress-inducing conversations while driving a vehicle. Avoid this. So you might be thinking, well, what should I do? So I like to use the analogies that the parent role should either be similar to a coach, giving tips and cheering their student on from the sidelines. Again, on the sidelines, you don't want the coach to jump on the field and start making the play. Or the executive assistant, helping your students stay organized, scheduling visits, noting upcoming deadlines, keeping things on track and on time. You can be at both, of course, but you likely know what would be most needed and helpful for your student. But again, you should ask your student. If they just shrug, then you might offer some specific examples of how you can be of assistance. So while I generally don't like telling people how to behave, I thought it might be useful to at least put up some guardrails for you in this process. Although it can be incredibly tempting, do not edit essays or complete applications for your student. We can tell the difference. Feedback should be more general observations and suggestions than actual rewriting. So if you think about when you're in Word, like in review, think comment box and not track changes. Also, try to avoid imposing your opinions without listening to your student. Your student is the one that will be enrolling, so really needs to feel engaged and invested in the process and the final decision. And although this may seem silly, it can be tempting, but don't pretend to be your student when you call the admissions office. It is awkward. And I know that sounds obvious, but you would be surprised. It is absolutely fine for you to contact a school and ask your question, but do try to avoid saying, my son or daughter is just really busy right now, so I figured I would call. We are absolutely fine with parents reaching out to us, but we hear that phrase about how busy their student is all the time. So encourage self-advocacy as much as you can, as it is a definite plus in this process. So what should you do? As much as possible, try to remain positive and calm. This is an exciting, but can be frequently overwhelming for your student, even if they seem like they are not worried and have it all under control. Remain steady, ask questions, and really try to listen. I've heard from many parents that frequently share that this is easiest when you set a certain time to have conversations about college. So just as we have established that you should not be doing this in the car while you're driving, you shouldn't get into a serious conversation on the fly or when you are frustrated or upset about something. Negotiate a time and place that works for both of you and put it on the calendar. Offer your assistance, but try not to be offended if they say no or don't want to take it. You might also try writing it down and give it to them so they can look at it when they're ready to consider how you might be of help to them. And also be in touch with yourself, not just your student. If you are feeling overly apprehensive and upset, stop and self-reflect and ask yourself why. Your role is above all to be a supportive parent in this process. If this whole thing feels just way too much, rely on your student's college counseling office, the different universities' admissions office, or consider an independent counselor. Your student needs you to be the one in their corner offering unconditional love and support more than they need you to offer them advice on college admissions. So I thought it'd be helpful just to briefly review what factors typically go into the admissions review process at many institutions. First and foremost, the transcript is almost always what's reviewed first. So schools are looking at what courses a student has taken, the grades in those courses, the overall academic rigor, their grade trend. Grade trend meaning, is their grades going up? Are they going down, or have they been steady? If there was a dip in grades, typically we encourage students to kind of tell us what's going on so that we understand. We're going to definitely not just look at the GPA, we're going to see the trend. So it's better to have a better understanding of what happened and what they've done to try and correct that trend. Scores used to be a factor, but again, not this year. I think almost every institution or colleague that I talked to has waived that for this year, given the current reality that students can't take the test. So probably now more than ever, as I've mentioned, we'll be reviewing the essay, letters of recommendations, activities, other things to try and help us in the decision. So in wrapping up, I want to share with you some resources that I strongly encourage you and your student to consider. This is a picture of our wonderful admissions staff, many of them. Like many places, SU invites students and family members to contact their admissions counselor. Typically, the counselor is assigned to a student by territory, which could be state, region, or high school. The admissions counselor can be a great resource for information and also an advocate for your student in the process. So definitely utilize this as it's a great resource throughout the process. So if you're wondering actually right now, like, well, who's my student's counselor at Seattle University? If you go to our website, you can actually go to the admissions site or just go to the search bar and type in find your admissions counselor, and you'll see a map, and then you can just sort of tap into what state or wherever it kind of takes you so that you can actually see who your counselor is. It gives you a chance to get to know who their counselor is, and then of course contact the counselor so they can begin learning a bit more about your student. So although sadly currently our campus is closed for official visits, there are many ways for you and your student to receive information and hopefully get a sense of campus life. We have moved all of our information sessions to a virtual setting. If you've received this message for tonight's presentation, you should also keep an eye out for future workshops, including many of the topics listed on this slide. We offered many of these earlier in the fall and probably will be offering them again throughout the season. We are sending the invites to your student directly, but typically are also copying parents if we have the parent email on file with us. And again, don't forget, November 7th is our fall preview day. So a lot of this will be gone over at that time. So Seattle University has an Office of Parent and Family Engagement, which you'll often find at many other institutions that your student is probably looking at. So it's wonderful to kind of see about this as a resource, both as a prospective parent and then later wherever your student chooses to enroll once you are then an actual parent for that institution. Most, and certainly ours, offer a monthly newsletter designed specifically for parents to keep parents up to date with what is happening on campus. Parent Council is made up of current parents, and they meet every few months to discuss issues, challenges, and solutions. It's a great way for incoming parents to get involved. And again, you can reach out like actually right now as a prospective parent, and they can put you in contact with the current parent to help kind of reflect on your experience, or if you have a question that you think they could answer about their findings and transition into their students' college experience. They also offer many webinars, and they are recorded. So if a parent can't make the designated time, or if you're interested in just kind of seeing what has been offered in the past, it's posted actually on our parent and family engagement site. And also this, I know that you only have so much time, but there are lots and lots of wonderful recommended reading on their website that I encourage you to check out. You can even just go kind of plunk it in and see some of the reviews on Amazon or wherever and decide what book you might find helpful in terms of helping give you some perspective. So in conclusion, I just wanted to leave you with a few final thoughts. So one is, of course, just to repeat, keeping things in perspective. The college search and application process is simply another milestone among many in your child's journey into adulthood. Take pride in all that your student has accomplished so far. That is what matters most, and it also will help you remain sane and happy in selective college admissions. Again, what's helpful also is to remind yourself that true affirmation and self-worth can't be and shouldn't be bestowed by a college during the senior year by people that don't even know your student beyond their application. It unfolds over a lifetime through hard work, compassion toward others, and a desire for lifelong learning. So again, good luck, and we really want to keep in touch with you in the months to come. And again, we are here to help, and we mean that sincerely, and welcome any questions along the way. So at this point, I'm going to stop my screen share and answer any questions that you might have or want to post in the Q&A. Also, I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Adrian Hodos, who's Associate Director of Admissions. He's going to help me with the Q&A if I need it. So If you have any questions, you can post it right down there. So I don't know if there are any down there right now.
We do have one to start with, Melore. It is about the financial aid process. So the question is, great, is there more to the financial aid process than submitting the FAFSA?
Great question. It depends on the institution. Here at Seattle University, we only require that a student files the FAFSA. There are some institutions that might have an additional form for you to complete. But here at Seattle University, it's really just the FAFSA, which you can actually file now. It was available October 1st. In most cases, and again, I'm saying this from a private university perspective, it can vary, but typically a student is considered for merit scholarships at the time of admission. So all of the things that go into their application are reviewed so that when a decision is made, we aim to make sure students and families know at the time of admission or shortly thereafter if they have received a merit scholarship. And then we will go through and do the financial aid. And here at SU, we just use the FAFSA. I was just talking to our director of financial aid, given what's going on right now in the world, and because the FAFSA will be based on 2019 tax returns, we're guessing there's going to be a lot of changes in many households. And so this could be a tricky year if there's been a change of income or circumstances. So just like I mentioned about reaching out to your admissions counselor, and once you receive the financial aid, they always say, first, just get your award and then follow up with any exceptions. You can certainly ask questions of our financial aid office now. We'll be doing workshops on this topic. They can then adjust and see if they can make an adjustment so it's reflective of your current situation.
Great. Let's see. The next question is there a typical time frame with the admissions process? Oh, so that's some important deadlines right there that we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, I'll just speak to Seattle University. So your student can apply a couple different ways. And again, this may be something that you know of, it may seem like all new terminology, so I'll explain it so I don't assume. We have what's called early action, and we also have regular decision. Early action is when your student submits their application by November 15th in our case. And by doing so, we guarantee a decision usually by the holidays. And so at that point, they'll know if they're admitted, they'll know if they're not admitted, or if they are deferred to regular decision. Sometimes when a student's deferred, it may be, one example is when I mentioned if there's a decline in the grades. So we may want to see how things are going in this first semester of their senior year. So it's definitely not a no or we're not interested. It just means we need some more information, particularly in some competitive programs. And then the decisions will be dropped all at one time. So if you're early action, everyone finds out the decision at the same time. And then we aim to have the financial aid awarded mid to late January. So there is an advantage by applying early action if it works for your student and they're ready, because you get to know a little bit sooner. Regular decision is January 15th, and we will then review those applications and drop decisions early March, followed shortly thereafter with financial aid. So there's a couple, the deadlines are what I kind of focus on, but if there's other things that you have questions about in terms of just wanting to go through the checklist, the admissions counselor can certainly say, oh, make sure if you have questions about your essay. I will just make one, this isn't an essay, this isn't a presentation on the essay, although we have one that we offer. I will say that to encourage your student to not wait to the last minute, because sometimes when we're on the common application, and we have some brief supplemental essays. And sometimes students will spend a lot of time focusing on just the essay on the Common App, and then it comes time to apply, and then all of a sudden they discover, oh my gosh, these universities I'm applying to have these additional essays. And so it's kind of funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's sort of like you have this polished gem of an essay, and then you have these just scrambled essays that they're trying to add. So to put their best foot forward, it's always good to kind of be on track with some built-in deadlines. I'll also say one last thing, just because it's funny. I always crack up because right before a deadline, we'll get calls from students, and it just makes me laugh because they'll call and say, so I have a question about the deadline. If there's a windstorm and my power goes out, can I apply late? They give all these scenarios like 2 weeks in advance. And we're always like, just apply. But, I understand you want to take advantage of all the time. So, but yeah, if there's questions about, when you should be doing things. The last thing I'll mention is that in most cases, students will have until May 1st to actually finalize where they choose to enroll in the fall. So if your student's applying to 5 institutions, we all know that we need to get your student a decision and a financial aid award if they're applying, and all the information possible so they can make an informed decision by May 1st. And everything we offer your student, is on the table, and we can't, leverage it or say, oh, you have to tell us soon or we're going to take it away, so that you can really have time to reflect and consider your options. But once I think a lot of students are like, no, I just want to be done and make my decision. But May 1st is the national deadline for letting us know.
Great, thanks, Melore. There's some good questions right around that. To clarify about early action regular decision, the question is, does early action increase the financial aid award, or is it better to wait for regular decision?
Great question. And that's probably something also that I think is out there and people are wondering how to, what they're doing. I would say in Seattle University's case, no. We sort of establish our approach to financial aid early on in our scholarship criteria, and we don't differentiate in terms of giving preference to one pool over the other. So I would say that there's not that advantage. Some students, I will say, because the merit scholarship is based on academics, a good portion of it. So some students, especially if they feel like they were doing, if they're kind of on the cusp, or if they feel like they want to have their first semester grades as part of that, we don't change scholarships after we go out. So some students prefer to wait, but certainly we don't intentionally try to give advantage over one group. Now, the one thing we don't offer here, but it's probably worth just mentioning, there are schools that offer something called early decision. Early decision is when your student tells one institution that if it's usually a very selective university. So, but you're basically saying to that institution, if you admit me, I'm going to withdraw all my other applications and I will go to your institution. The only challenge with that many counselors at the high school will caution against is that you don't know your financial aid. So if you had to withdraw your applications and then you find out that the financial aid isn't what you thought, you can be it may be difficult to actually be considered to other schools. So there's a little bit of game playing with that, which if you're working with or looking at a particular school, your counselor or someone else can kind of just talk about the benefits and the cautions associated with that.
Great, thanks, Melore. There's more questions about scholarships and financial aid. So certainly, I think there's already been some great things in the chat. We certainly encourage you to reach out to our financial aid office. However, this is a general question I think will be helpful to answer is, can you explain more about scholarships SU offers? And do students need to apply separately for them, or are they automatically considered?
Great question. I would say that the vast majority of our merit scholarships are just with the application for admission. We're not trying to make it hard. In fact, as I mentioned, we want your students to come here. So if we're going to admit a student, we want to definitely know that finances and financial aid and scholarships are always usually some portion of the equation. For some, it's a small part. For others, it's a big part of the decision. So we will usually, I think our scholarships last year ranged anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000. So there's kind of a range. All of our scholarships are renewable for 4 years for the students to know that it's not going to be taken away after the first year. There are, though, a couple scholarships that students do need to apply separately for. So the one, if you're not familiar, is called the Sullivan Leadership Award. And so we do have a scholarship for 9 students each year that is a leadership scholarship that covers full tuition, room and board. And so that application process, you can actually look on our website. It says Sullivan. It's for students it's not just students that are academically accomplished, but also are very engaged and involved and really want to develop their leadership potential. So that application is November 30th, I believe. So I will just say that if a student progresses, it's a process. So students do have to, well, actually now they'll do it virtually, I'm assuming. But there's a few different things that we have in that process. And then of course, if a student was admitted in December and they had a nice scholarship, but then they get the Sullivan, we'll obviously replace the scholarship and say, okay, we'll take that away to add the Sullivan. The other one that I'm thinking of, and Adrian, if I'm missing anything, let me know. And we do have an honors program. And so our honors program you apply to separately, and it's more of like a cherry on top. I think it's another $1,800 that a student will receive on top of their financial aid award to participate in the honors program. But again, all of our institutional scholarships, we try to make as easy as possible. There are other outside scholarships, of course, that your student might be applying for. And so we, one thing that we also do is that when students let us know that they have an outside scholarship, we don't penalize them. We try and take away any unmet need or loan or things like that so that your student can be rewarded for doing the hustle and finding those additional scholarships.
Great, thanks, Melore. This is a great admissions question. Does Seattle U have direct entry programs?
Yes. I almost feel like now that Adrian's here, I should mix it up. We do. In fact, I think that is an advantage that many, it depends on where you're looking, but all of our programs, you have direct entry. So the one that comes to mind, which is the most competitive, is our nursing program. And so when we look at the application, the prerequisites students have taken, and if we feel that they've already met the requirements that we think would allow them to be successful in that program, nursing, you have to have chemistry and biology, strong math background. It's competitive, so good grades. Computer science, engineering, obviously we take a closer look at the math and the courses and performance, but we will admit students directly. So at the time of application, the Common App, the drop-down box, and your student can just indicate what major, and we'll automatically consider. Honestly, I used to spend so much time emphasizing the direct entry because I thought it was such a great advantage for many students that knew what they wanted, that I used to scare a few students because then they'd say, what if I change my mind? That's fine too. So again, I would say that if your student knows what they want to pursue, they can be admitted directly. If they change their mind or they need some more time, there's also no pressure to declare a major. There's no disadvantage. I've heard that also being a myth, that people think that if they don't know what they want to study, that they'll be viewed as indecisive. And I'm like, they're 17. They don't know necessarily. So we actually have a great advising program to help students decide on the major so that they can. And I see right now popped up the engineering. Engineering for first year, there's some, depends on transfer, but first year, in the most case, it is competitive, but it's, for the most part, students that meet it's physics, chemistry, usually the 4 years, calculus. Yeah, so I'm looking, I can also see Adrian. So engineering is a competitive program and we do direct entry. So all of our majors are direct entry.
And as of now, we have no more questions in the Q&A, so we certainly would encourage you to put any additional questions that you have in that Q&A function. We'd love to answer them, especially about Seattle U and the admissions process, or just using Melore's expertise in terms of all things admissions. I'm also going through the chat. I know some of you did put some questions there. Melore, there was a question about advice for vetting outside scholarships. Certainly, like there's marketing ploys about getting data and some concern about what's credible. Do you have any words of wisdom for that?
Definitely, you should never have to pay for a scholarship, so an application for a scholarship. And in fact, our website, our Student Financial Services, lists a variety of websites that they think are credible, that kind of serve as a place that you can trust, that you know. And I would say definitely also depending on your high school and the counselor there, if there's any doubt or question, but definitely a student would never want to pay. Again, go to our website and you can see. The one thing also, so I don't forget the thought, when I was answering the last question about engineering, I neglected to tell everyone, if you're not aware, that our new CSI Center for Science Innovation will be opening this fall. So it is going to be a beautiful new space. I also encourage you to go to our website. And even though there is a pandemic, we still have people working on that every day. And so I'm on campus today, and it's just amazing to see this space come together. So for I think all students, but particularly our science engineering students, will find a home there. And then we're trying to make sure that other students can take advantage of this beautiful space in their education as well.
Great, thanks, Melore. At this point, we just got one last question. Do you have to live on campus as a first-year student?
Yeah, we always kind of laugh and say we guarantee housing for the first 2 years, which is another way of saying we require the housing unless a student chooses to live with at home or with a family member in the area. So we think it's important for students to be on campus instead of trying to go get an apartment, just so they can have that transition and connection and adjustment. So we do guarantee housing, but for students that are in the area or have a family member, it's not a requirement. So you can kind of find out what your situation is and speak with someone about that. Obviously right now, depending on if you're coming from near or far, we would work with the family to make sure that they feel comfortable and safe in the space. But we're hoping, of course, that students, we have right now about 800 students living on campus. And of course, with being virtual, we have, of course, not required students be on campus to live in residence hall. So.
Great, thanks, Melore. We got another question about the deadline for the honors program. I can certainly take that. Once your student applies to the honors program, to Seattle University in their application portal, they will see an invitation to apply to the honors program. And they operate on a rolling basis, but the last deadline is about January 15th. So we try to work with students on a wide variety of different deadlines. They do have 3 tracks. I'm seeing that second question. There's the Innovations, Intellectual Traditions, and Society Policy and Citizenship track. The honors program, as well as your student's admissions counselor, would love to tell you more about each unique track. They're really thoughtfully done to engage students based on their interests as well as their academic program. There are a few limitations. So students in engineering and Mateo Ricci humanities programs have challenges with honors, but certainly a wonderful program to look into, and we'd love to follow up. Next question is, although campus is closed for tours, is it possible to do a self-tour, or do you have official self-tour available?
Absolutely, the campus is open. I think they, obviously their signage encouraging, or I think actually asking people to wear masks and be safe, but I've seen many people walking through campus, checking it out. We have a virtual tour on our website that's actually a great way to kind of orient you to our campus. I'm trying to, Adrian, do we actually have anything else in terms of when a student, we don't have actually like an app for students to take on a self-guided tour. It's more
at this point, no. Our students have been doing live Instagram tours. So if you're not already following Seattle U admissions, that's a great way to also see campus.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so once again, we'd love to invite you to ask any more questions that you have. We have about 5 minutes left and love the variety of questions. Thank you for your engagement tonight.
And if you haven't already written down my email address, certainly feel free to jot it down, and as things come up, I often kind of joke that I don't have all the answers, but I know a lot of people. So I just celebrated my 23rd year at Seattle University. So if you would like to be in contact with someone or have a very specific question and you're not sure how to make that connection, email me, email your admissions counselor. We will make sure and get back in touch so that you have all the information you need in this process.
Great. And with that, I'm not seeing more questions. So feel free. I think we can wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here tonight and spending time with us and supporting your students in their college search.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for your time. And again, I hope this is just the beginning of a conversation that we'll be having with you and your student. And again, we take general questions, specific questions. Just let us know you're not alone. And if you just want to talk parent to parent about the silly things or ridiculous situations you find yourself in or things that you're like, oh, we're all just doing the best we can. So be kind to yourself and just make sure your student knows how much you care and love and support them. So thanks everyone and good luck with this process.